I never thought 6 words could end a marriage. Not like that. Not without screaming or tears or some dramatic exit worthy of reality TV. Just cool. Then the soft click of our front door closing behind him. It's been 97 days since Kevin walked out. 3 months and change of silence that speaks louder than any argument we ever had. I'm Eliza Morgan, 34, and this is the story of how I dismantled my life one carefully chosen insult at a time. It started the way most toxic things do. Gradually, quietly, with perfectly reasonable justifications. I met Kevin at a gallery opening in 2017. I was there representing our PR firm's newest client. He was there because his cousin's photography was being featured. He wasn't supposed to be my type. My dating history read like a casting call. The entrepreneur with venture capital connections. The surgeon with the vacation home in Aspen. The finance guy, whose name occasionally appeared in the business section of the Times. Kevin taught history at a public high school. I nearly didn't give him my number that night, but there was something in the way he talked about his cousin's photographs, with this genuine pride and understanding of the work that made me curious. He didn't perform interest the way most men did when trying to impress me. He simply was interested, and that authenticity felt like stumbling upon something rare. Our first date was at a tiny Ethiopian restaurant in a neighborhood I rarely ventured to. Best food in the city that no one knows about, he promised. He was right. We sat on low stools, eating with our hands, and I forgot to check my phone for 3 hours straight. "You're different than I expected," he said while walking me home. Different how? Less carefully constructed. When I raised an eyebrow, he laughed. "That came out wrong. I mean, at the gallery, you had this polished PR persona. Tonight, I got to see the real you. I like her better." I kissed him first. I never kissed first. 6 months later, I was introducing him to my college friends over brunch. I still remember Olivia's face when I mentioned he was a teacher. The slight widening of her eyes, the quick recovery. Later, in the bathroom, she asked, "Is this like a palate cleanser relationship? After Brad?" Brad being the investment banker I dated for 2 years, who cheated with his administrative assistant. "No," I said, defensive and perhaps a little too emphatic. "Kevin's different." "He's real." She squeezed my arm. "As long as you're happy." I was happy. Kevin's apartment became my refuge from the high-pressure world of corporate PR. His place was modest but thoughtfully furnished, shelves overflowing with history books and vinyl records, walls covered with maps and art his students had given him. We'd cook elaborate meals together on Sundays, listening to his eclectic music collection. He'd grade papers while I caught up on emails, both of us comfortable in the silence. When he proposed a year later, I said yes without hesitation. The ring wasn't spectacular, a vintage emerald that had belonged to his grandmother, but it felt right on my finger in a way the massive diamond Brad had once hinted at never would have. My mother was less enthusiastic. "He seems very nice, honey," she said, emphasizing nice in that particular way mothers do when they mean the opposite. "But have you really thought about the lifestyle differences? You've always had certain expectations." "I'm not marrying his bank account, Mom. I'm marrying him." "Just make sure you can live with his choices long term," she said, patting my hand. "Your father started small too, but he had ambition." I dismissed her concerns as outdated and shallow. Kevin's passion for teaching, his contentment with his life, seemed refreshing after years of dating men whose worth was measured by their last promotion. We were in love. That was enough. Until, slowly, it wasn't. The shift happened so gradually I barely noticed it at first. We'd been married for just over a year when my firm made me a director. Suddenly, I was being invited to events with C-suite executives and their equally successful spouses. Events where the first question was always, "What do you do?" followed immediately by, "And your husband?" "He's a teacher," I'd say, watching their polite smiles freeze. How rewarding, they'd reply, before inevitably drifting away to network with someone more useful. At home, I started noticing things I'd previously found charming about our life together. The secondhand furniture, Kevin's ancient car with its peeling bumper stickers, his contentment with simply being good at his job rather than climbing any ladder. My friend Isabel didn't help matters. She'd married Wyatt, a tech entrepreneur whose startup had just been valued at 8 figures. Their Instagram was a curated display of first-class travel and their newly renovated brownstone. "We should do a couple's trip to Bali," she suggested over drinks one night. "Wyatt knows this amazing villa." "That sounds great," I said automatically, then remembered Kevin's teacher's salary and my own rising but not unlimited income. Let me check with Kevin about dates. Later that night, I looked at our joint account balance, then at Isabel's Instagram post from her anniversary dinner at a restaurant, where the tasting menu started at $400 per person. I felt something ugly take root. "We should set some financial goals," I told Kevin that weekend while he was grading midterms at our kitchen table. "Maybe look at investing more aggressively." He glanced up, reading glasses perched on his nose. "What brought this on?" "I was just thinking about our future. Maybe we should be pushing harder now so we have more options later." "We're doing fine, Liz. We have retirement accounts, a decent emergency fund." "What more do we need?" "Growth," I said, the word tasting bitter on my tongue. "Everyone else seems to be moving forward, and we're just static." Kevin set down his pen. "Everyone like who? Isabel and Wyatt?" When I didn't answer, he sighed. "Their circumstances are completely different. And since when do we make decisions based on what other people are doing?" "It's not about them specifically," I lied. "It's about having a plan, having ambition." "I have ambition," he said quietly. "It just doesn't look like what you suddenly seem to want." The conversation ended there, but the seed had been planted. I began calculating what Kevin's career limitations meant for our future. No vacation home, no luxury travel, no private schools if we had children. None of the trappings that increasingly seemed to define success in my world. Instead of appreciating what we had, I became fixated on what we didn't. And I began to blame Kevin for it. By our second anniversary, I had developed the habit of sending Kevin job listings. "The private school in Brighton is looking for a history department chair," I'd text. Or, "Did you see that museum education director position? Better hours, better pay." Each time, his response was the same. "I'm happy where I am." At dinner with friends, I started making small comments. "Kevin's so dedicated to his students, even if the system doesn't reward that financially." Or, "The school's lucky to have him, though they certainly don't pay him what he's worth." I thought I was being supportive, highlighting his value despite his modest profession. I didn't realize I was systematically undermining him, framing his choices as noble sacrifices rather than deliberate decisions. Meanwhile, I was advancing at my firm, bringing in higher-profile clients, attending more exclusive events where I increasingly went alone because Kevin had papers to grade, or simply wasn't interested in networking with people who measure success by the square footage of their vacation homes, as he put it during one particularly tense argument. "You could at least make an effort," I snapped, smoothing my new dress that had cost more than Kevin spent on clothes in a year. "These connections matter for my career. I support your career, Eliza. I don't have to pretend to enjoy superficial conversations with people who can't remember my name because what I do isn't impressive to them." That's not fair, isn't it? Last time, that hedge fund guy asked what I did 3 separate times during the same conversation. After the 3rd time, I told him I was a professional dolphin trainer just to see if he was listening. He nodded and asked if there was good money in that. I couldn't help laughing then, the tension momentarily broken. Kevin pulled me into a hug, kissing the top of my head. "Go without me. Dazzle them with your brilliance. I'll be here when you get home." For a moment, I remembered why I'd fallen in love with him, his groundedness, his quiet confidence in who he was. But that clarity was increasingly fleeting, clouded by my growing dissatisfaction. The distance between us widened. I stayed late at the office, volunteered for weekend client emergencies, said yes to every industry event. Home began to feel confining, a reminder of the disconnect between my expanding professional world and my personal life. Kevin noticed, of course. He wasn't stupid. "Are we okay?" he asked one night as I scrolled through my phone in bed instead of talking to him. "Just tired," I said, without looking up. "You're always tired lately, or working, or out." I finally met his eyes. "What do you want from me, Kevin? I'm building something important." "And this," he gestured between us, "isn't important." "That's not what I meant." "Then what did you mean?" "Because it feels like you're embarrassed by me, by our life." "That's ridiculous," I said, but I couldn't hold his gaze. He sighed, that deep exhale of a person too tired to argue. "When you figure out what you actually want, let me know." But I already knew what I wanted. The lifestyle my success seemed to promise and his choices seemed to limit. I just couldn't admit it, not even to myself. The breaking point came during the spring of our 3rd year of marriage. My firm had just landed a major luxury brand account, and I was invited to the client's annual gala, a black tie affair at the art museum, where celebrities and influencers would be in attendance. "You have to come to this one," I told Kevin, trying to keep the desperation from my voice. "It's really important." To my surprise, he agreed without argument. He even rented a tuxedo, getting ready without complaint as I fussed over my hair and the designer dress I'd splurged on. "You look beautiful," he said sincerely as we walked into the museum. For the first hour, everything went perfectly. Kevin was charming with my clients, asked intelligent questions, remembered details about their lives from stories I'd shared. I felt a surge of pride watching him navigate the room, a momentary reminder of why we'd fallen in love. Then I overheard it, a snippet of conversation between my boss and her husband. "Which one is Eliza's husband again?" the husband asked. "The one in the rented tux," my boss replied. "The teacher." Something in her tone made my skin crawl. Not mockery exactly, but a kind of dismissive acknowledgement, as if Kevin's profession was a curious choice that required explanation. Later, I introduced Kevin to Wyatt, Isabel's husband, who was attending as an investor in several luxury brands. "Nice to finally meet you," Wyatt said, shaking Kevin's hand. "Isabel tells me you're shaping young minds. Noble work." "Just doing my job," Kevin replied with an easy smile. "Like we all are." Sure, Wyatt nodded. "Hey, did Isabel mention we just closed on a place in the Berkshires? You guys should come up sometime this summer. That would be great," I jumped in before Kevin could respond. "We've been talking about investing in property too, actually." Kevin gave me a sharp look but said nothing. On the cab ride home, the silence between us was deafening. "We have not been talking about buying property," he finally said as we entered our apartment. "Why would you say that? It was just conversation." "It was a lie. One that implies we're in the same financial bracket as people who can casually buy second homes." He loosened his bow tie with jerky movements. "You're ashamed of our life. I'm not ashamed. I'm ambitious." There's a difference between ambition and pretending to be something you're not, or rather, something I'm not. What's that supposed to mean? Kevin ran a hand through his hair in frustration. "It means you keep trying to retrofit me into this narrative of success that I never signed up for. I love teaching. I'm good at it. I make a difference in my students' lives. But that's never going to come with the trappings you seem to suddenly need." "It's not sudden," I said, the words escaping before I could stop them. "And it's not about trappings. It's about potential, about not settling." His face changed then, hardened in a way I'd never seen before. "So that's what you think I'm doing? Settling. I didn't mean..." "Yes, you did." He was quiet for a moment. "Do you know what I saw tonight? I saw you performing, laughing too loud at unfunny jokes, name-dropping, apologizing for me without saying the words. That's not fair, isn't it? 2 years ago, you loved that I didn't care about status. Now you're trying to force me into some alternate version of myself that would..." People change, Kevin. Their goals change. Their values shouldn't. We went to bed angry that night, the first time in our marriage we'd broken that unspoken rule. In the morning, Kevin had already left for school when I woke up. No note, no text. That evening, I came home to find him sitting at our kitchen table, a stack of papers in front of him. "What's all this?" I asked, setting down my bag. "College applications for a master's program." My heart lifted momentarily. "That's great. In education administration?" "No." His eyes met mine, challenging. "In historical research and preservation. It's what I've always been passionate about." "But that doesn't make sense financially. Those positions pay even less than teaching." He laughed without humor. "And there it is. You don't actually care about my growth unless it aligns with your vision of success." "That's not true. I want you to be fulfilled, but we have to be practical too." "Practical according to whom? Your friends with their second homes? Your mother who still asks when I'm getting a real job?" I felt cornered, defensive. "Why are you so resistant to improving our situation? To giving us more options?" "Because the options you want come at the cost of who I am," he said simply. "I can be a great teacher making a modest salary, or I can be miserable in a higher paying job I hate. Those are my options." "That's a false choice. You could find something that pays better that you still enjoy." "Could I? Or would that just be the first step? Would that ever be enough for you? Or would you keep moving the goalposts?" He pushed away from the table. "I'm going for a walk." I stared at the college applications after he left, anger and frustration brewing. Why couldn't he see that I was trying to help us both? That I was carrying the weight of our financial future while he indulged in career satisfaction without concern for the lifestyle implications? By the time he returned, I'd worked myself into righteous indignation. "We need to talk about this rationally," I said as he hung up his jacket. "About our future and what we both want." "I know exactly what I want," he replied. "I'm just not sure you want the same thing anymore." "What's that supposed to mean?" He sat down across from me, his expression resigned. "It means I'm watching you become someone who measures everything by its monetary value or status. Someone who sees my career as a liability rather than a calling." "That's not," I started to object, but he cut me off. 3 weeks ago, at Aiden's dinner party, I overheard you telling his wife that I was between opportunities, like teaching is just some temporary situation until I find a real career. Do you have any idea how that felt? I flushed, remembering the moment. Aiden's wife had asked what my husband did, and instead of simply saying he's a teacher, I'd made it sound like Kevin was in transition to something better. "I was just making conversation." "You were making excuses for me." His voice was steady, but I could hear the hurt beneath it. "Like loving what I do and being good at it isn't enough if it doesn't come with the right salary or title." "That's not what I meant." "Then what did you mean, Eliza?" "Because from where I'm sitting, it seems like you wanted to marry someone with ambition. And now you're realizing that my ambition just doesn't look like what you'd hoped." The accusation stung because it contained a kernel of truth I wasn't ready to acknowledge. I lashed out instead. "You're twisting my words. I'm proud of what you do. I just think you could be doing more, aiming higher." "Higher according to whose standards?" "According to reality," I was nearly shouting now. "Do you think we can afford children on your salary, or that house you talk about wanting someday? Every time Isabel posts pictures from their latest vacation, I wonder when we'll ever be able to travel like that." "So that's the measuring stick now? Keeping up with Isabel and Wyatt?" "It's not about them specifically. It's about having options, about not being limited." Kevin was quiet for a long moment, studying me with an expression I couldn't read. Finally, he said, "I think the only real limitation here is that you're no longer content with the life you chose when you married me." The words hit me like a physical blow. I opened my mouth to deny it, but nothing came out. In the silence, he continued, his voice softer now. "I'm never going to be a six-figure earner, Eliza. I'm never going to care about status or appearances the way your world demands. If that's become a deal breaker for you, we should be honest about it." "It's not a deal breaker," I said automatically, but even to my own ears, it lacked conviction. Kevin nodded slowly, as if confirming something to himself. "I'm going to stay at Craig's for a few days. We both need some space to think." "Don't be dramatic. We can work through this." "Can we?" "Because it feels like we're speaking different languages lately. Like we want fundamentally different things." We're having a rough patch. Every marriage does. He stood up, already moving toward our bedroom. A rough patch is when you fight about whose turn it is to do the dishes, not when you're fundamentally ashamed of who your partner is. I'm not ashamed of you. But even as I said it, I knew it wasn't entirely true. Not of him as a person, but of what he represented in the world I was increasingly trying to belong to. Kevin emerged a few minutes later with an overnight bag. He paused at the door, looking at me with a sadness that made my chest ache. You know what hurts the most? I haven't changed, Eliza. My values, my goals, who I am, that's all the same as when you fell in love with me. You're the one who changed the rules. I should have gone to him then. Should have admitted my insecurities, my misplaced priorities. Instead, I said the unforgivable. You're not a bad guy, Kevin. Just not a man I'd brag about. His expression went completely blank, a shuddering so complete it was like watching a light go out. Cool, he said flatly. Then he walked out. I expected him back the next day, or the day after that. I sent texts that went unanswered, left voicemails he didn't return. After a week, I went to Craig's apartment, only to be told Kevin had moved out 3 days earlier. No, Craig didn't know where, or he wouldn't tell me. 2 weeks after Kevin left, a formal letter arrived from his lawyer. He was filing for divorce on grounds of irreconcilable differences. Clinical, impersonal legalese outlining the end of 3 years of marriage, of a life we'd built together. The shock gave way to indignation. How dare he just walk away? How dare he not fight for us? I called Isabel, expecting sympathy, only to be met with uncomfortable silence. Don't you think you might have gone too far? She finally asked. Excuse me? That comment about him not being someone you'd brag about? That's pretty devastating, Liz. I was frustrated. We were fighting. Still, if Wyatt said something like that to me. She trailed off. Have you considered that maybe you've been comparing your relationship to an Instagram version of everyone else's? That's not fair, isn't it? You've been making these little comments about Kevin for months now. About his job, his car, his lack of ambition. We all noticed. It was uncomfortable. I thought you of all people would understand, I said, hurt by her assessment. What I understand is that you married a good man who loves what he does and supports your goals even when they conflict with his values. And somehow that stopped being enough for you. After hanging up, I scrolled through my social media, looking at the curated lives of my friends, the vacation photos, the home renovations, the promotion announcements. I had been measuring my happiness against these carefully edited moments, treating them as the standard rather than the highlight reels they were. For the first time, I allowed myself to consider that Kevin might have been right, that I had changed, not him, that I had allowed external markers of success to override the genuine connection and shared values that had brought us together in the first place. The realization came too late. Kevin had changed his number, blocked my email. His divorce attorney was the only point of contact, and those communications were strictly about dividing assets. There would be no dramatic reconciliation, no opportunity to take back those fatal words. 3 months later, as I signed the final divorce papers, I heard through mutual friends that Kevin had accepted a fellowship at a historical preservation society in another state. He was pursuing his passion after all, just without me. Isabel called that evening, her voice gentler than it had been in months. I heard the divorce was finalized today. How are you holding up? I've been better, I admitted. Did you know about the fellowship? He mentioned it when we had coffee last week, she said cautiously. You've been seeing him? The betrayal stung. Not like that. He reached out to apologize for disappearing from the friend group. We got to talking. She hesitated. He seems good, Liz. Sad about how things ended, but at peace with his direction. I swallowed hard against the lump in my throat. I'm glad. Are you? Yes, I said, surprising myself with the truth of it. He deserves to be happy, to be with someone who values what I couldn't see clearly. And what about you? What do you deserve? I thought about it for a long moment. a chance to remember who I was before I started measuring my worth by other people's standards. After we hung up, I deleted my Instagram app, then my Twitter, then Facebook. The digital detox wasn't a magic cure, but it created space to think without constant comparison. 2 weeks later, I ran into Olivia at a coffee shop. The same friend who'd asked if Kevin was a palate cleanser relationship all those years ago. "How are you really doing?" she asked as we settled at a small table. "Figuring things out," I said honestly, asking myself some hard questions about what actually matters to me versus what I thought should matter. She nodded thoughtfully. "You know, I envied you and Kevin." I nearly choked on my coffee. "You what?" "Seriously. Wyatt and I look great on paper. The house, the cars, the vacations. But he works 80-hour weeks. We barely see each other. Last month we had an argument because he missed our anniversary dinner for a client meeting." She stirred her latte absently. "Meanwhile, you had someone who came home at a reasonable hour, who was present when he was with you, who talked about your day like he actually cared about the answer." "I never saw it that way," I admitted. "I was too busy looking at what you had that we didn't." "Grass is always greener, right?" She gave me a sad smile. "We're all just fumbling through, pretending we know what makes a good life." Later that evening, I found myself looking at photos from early in our relationship. Kevin and I making pasta in his tiny kitchen, hiking in the state park, laughing at some forgotten joke on his couch, surrounded by books and empty wine glasses. We hadn't had much, but we'd had each other. It had been enough then. I drafted a dozen emails I never sent. What was there to say that could undo the damage of that single, cruel sentence? "You're not a bad guy, just not a man I'd brag about." Words that revealed more about my character than his. Instead, I enrolled in therapy, started volunteering at a literacy program that Kevin had once mentioned supporting, slowly rebuilt friendships I'd neglected in my ladder climbing, found value in areas of my life I'd been measuring by the wrong metrics. 6 months after our divorce was finalized, I saw him. Not in person, on the website of the Preservation Society, photographed beside a newly restored historical building. He looked good. Different somehow, more comfortable in his skin than I remembered. The caption mentioned his role in securing a grant for the project, his expertise in early American architecture. I felt a complicated mix of emotions. Pride in his accomplishments, sadness for what we'd lost, and a peculiar sense of relief that he'd found his way forward without compromising who he was. I closed the browser without reaching out. Some bridges, once burned, can't be rebuilt. Some lessons come at too high a cost to be worth the education. But as painful as the loss has been, I'm grateful for the clarity it eventually brought. I understand now what my mother never taught me, and what our status-obsessed culture actively discourages. That a life of authentic purpose will always be more fulfilling than one spent impressing others. That the quiet integrity of loving what you do has an inherent value no salary or title can match. Kevin wasn't the one who needed to change. He knew who he was all along. I was the one who lost sight of what mattered, seduced by the carefully curated illusions of success that surrounded me. He wasn't a man I'd brag about, and that says everything about who I was then and nothing about who he truly is. 97 days since he walked out. I've stopped counting now. Started looking forward instead of back. Started recognizing that the most impressive accomplishment isn't having a partner others envy, but becoming someone who doesn't need that validation in the first place. Too late for us, perhaps, but not too late for me to learn from it. Not too late to remember who I was before I started measuring my life by standards that were never mine to begin with.